Do I need to announce it's episode 2?
Do whatever you want.
You just did.
Oh, are we starting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hey, welcome to episode 2 of our podcast, Life at 2030. So it's my turn. Well, I'm not going to tell all the stories or anything, but these are 3 stories that happened to Dad and I together on the bus. So we are continuing with the bus stories because they're just too great to not say. So I used to work at the courthouse, and there was this guy who legally changed his name to Ringo Starr. And he always came in filing small claims against anyone and everyone that he could. I was laughing because he was trying to file a small claims against the mayor's wife. It was the best thing ever. He thought that she was stealing his mail, so he wanted to sue her. And Dad, what is your experience with Ringo Starr?
Well, Ringo used to ride my bus all the time and used to tell me how he was the original Ringo Starr. He always wore clothes that had stars on them and said Ringo Starr, and he had a jacket that said Ringo Starr. He had a Mini Cooper that didn't run that had Ringo Starr on the top. He had rings on every finger, rode a bike.
Didn't he have long hair too
Long
and glasses?
Long white hair.
That's right.
He was older.
And he had sunglasses, like
Right.
always.
And he'd get on my bus and we'd talk, and he would tell me all about how people were trying to destroy him and how he actually was the real Ringo Starr, but they didn't like the way he did it, so they picked somebody else. And I asked him where he lived in England, and he said, "Oh, I never lived in England." So, but I drop him off at the courthouse all the time. He always went to the courthouse, and he lived in Mill Creek somewhere. At least that's where I always picked him up. But he was an interesting character to talk to, and he was always mad at somebody.
Oh, he was really funny. Everybody gathered around at the courthouse when he'd walk in, and he would tell us about his Rolls Royce. That was an $80,000 Rolls Royce, but it just didn't work yet. He was fixing it up. And so it was really funny. Dad and I would both get home from work about the same time, start talking about how we each saw Ringo Starr that day. And I said, yeah, he came in the courthouse, and Dad said, he got on my bus. And so we always laughed and just discussed how I think he was pretty cool. I liked it.
He's still out there. I still
there.
see him.
Do you really?
Yeah, he has a bike now that has a trailer, and he picks up cans and aluminum, takes them down to the recycler at 33rd.
I bet he's still filing small claims.
Yeah, and he still looks the same. He still looks like 70 years old, and he hasn't.
I wonder how old his jacket is, if he's replaced
Still
it yet.
wears the Ringo jacket, the leather one.
So he's still Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
There you go. That's so funny. This other time, so there's this guy named, we nicknamed him Kaboom. I actually don't know his real name. And so where I started seeing Kaboom, when I went to the University of Utah, I would see him all over campus. He was a maintenance guy, especially around the Natural History Museum, where he would go in there and sweep and empty the garbage when I was going to my gender psychology class. And then that was the semester that I would catch my dad's bus going home every day. And that was actually so exciting. I know I was in college, but still I was this little girl going, my dad's picking me up from school. Then I'd finish the bus route with you, and then we would catch the ride to the next story. But what is your history with Kaboom? Because you also knew him.
Yeah, I first met Kaboom. There was a little Down syndrome girl that worked at Smith's, which was my end of the line. And I went in there one day and I told her that I wanted some sweets. And she says, I'm going to tell you a secret. Donut holes are holes. They have no calories. So I bought a box of donut holes because they had no calories. And so she got on the bus and I met this guy. And he started talking about the food and she told him about the donuts. And so we discussed different kinds of sandwiches, donut hole sandwiches with peanut butter and bananas, and he'd go, yuck. And when he would get off my bus, he would jump from the top step, because my bus went through the university in downtown. And he would jump from the top step, and when he would hit the ground, he would go, kaboom! And then sometimes when I'd pick him up, he'd get on my bus and he'd go, somebody stop me!
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And so him and I would discuss different kinds of sandwiches. So when I picked Julie up at the university, I was doing Route 13. We would go to the Smiths at 33rd and 33rd. Then we would get on a bus and it would take us home. So that's how Julie and I rode together. And Kaboom was an interesting character. And I called him Kaboom because I never knew his name and he never offered it and I never asked it.
And we would continue razzing him with the food the whole
Right,
time.
we would razz him the whole time with kinds of sandwiches he should eat.
I remember you saying, let's put chocolate on your hamburger. And he's like, ew, yuck. We always gave him such a hard time. So when I was taking my final at the U, in the same gender psychology class, there was at least 400 people in this auditorium taking a test, and it was very quiet. And I was sitting by the closed door, and all of a sudden I hear, somebody stop me. And I turn and I'm like, Kaboom? Is that you? What are the odds of that? I mean, probably great anyway, but that was so funny. And I love that connection that we have. There's so many people that we met just even through the bus, because I rode the bus everywhere to the University of Utah. It took forever. And that was always great of you to tell me how to get there and all the different connections, because that was complicated. So you can imagine how happy I was to be able to ride the bus home with you. And when Dad would drop off Kaboom, we would wait for how long? For
about 10 minutes till Ralph came.
And enter Ralph. When I first met Ralph, he would go and wash his hands and have a break as well before he rode the bus. And I remember drove the bus. And I remember sticking my hand out, going to shake his hand, saying, "Hey, I'm Julie. Hi, Ralph. Nice to meet you." He refused to shake my hand. He's like, "I just washed my hands. Sorry. Just starting my route. Can't do this." And it was so funny. And he went and would sit on the bus and eat his banana in 3 bites. And he had this water bottle that was massive. It was like 2 gallons with the tiniest little mouthpiece, and he would lift it up and just chug. I just thought Ralph was amazing. He made me laugh. So Dad, let's tell your story about Ralph. And
well, Ralph was an older driver. He was getting ready to retire. And Ralph was always concerned, and he was a funny guy. And one day, when I got on Ralph's bus, my right elbow was all swollen. And it hurt really bad. And so there was an Instacare along the way. So I told Ralph, I said, I just put on this sweater this morning and it's been hanging in my closet all summer. So I wonder if I got bit by a spider on my arm because I'm not feeling very well. And so Ralph says, "You better go to Instacare." And
he was freaking out.
So Ralph was freaking out, and he said, "Get over there." So Julie and I went into Instacare, and I went in, and they checked my arm, and I had bursitis. So they put a syringe in my arm and pulled out several syringes full of fluid and stuff. So they gave me a sling for my arm and said, "Okay, you can go back to work." And I said, "I could drive bus with this sling?" And they said, "Sure." So I went back to work and told them, "The doc said I can drive bus with this sling." And they said, "No, you can't." I said, "Well, the doc said I could." They said, "No, until you don't need the sling, you're not going back to work." So I couldn't go to work for 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, we had what's called change day. We changed routes.
Your favorite.
So I hated change day. Anyway, so I didn't see Ralph again until it was several months. And Ralph saw me and I saw him, and he says, "I thought you had died from that spider bite."
We were laughing so hard just being in Ralph's mind, thinking, what is he going through? Paul's dead. He's dead.
He's
I
thinking
know it.
I'm dead, but didn't get a chance to see him because when you go to work, you see the same 10 or 12 people and then you're out of there. So it's not like you see all 700 drivers, you just see a few.
Just the ones that relieve you.
Right, and I never saw Ralph driving a bus again. And so he was glad to see that I didn't die, and he was mad at me that I didn't find him and stop him and tell him that I wasn't dead.
You were glad to find that Ralph was still Ralph.
Ralph was still Ralph.
So explain really quick why you didn't like the change days.
Well, 3 times a year, we had to change bus routes. And that's because one was the beginning of ski season, one was the end of ski season, and one was the beginning of school. So they had to add buses, take away buses. So 3 times a year we changed routes and we bid for the routes. And so I'd just get used to my people, and then they'd split my run up, they'd do something, and I'd have to go learn a new group of people.
Because you had favorites.
Yeah, and sometimes I wouldn't see these people who I'd got to know for a long time because you just don't drive around just to see people standing at a bus stop, because if you pull up in your car to pick them up, they run because they're not used to it. And there's several times that I've seen people standing at a bus stop in my car and I've pulled over to pick them up, or I've stopped at railroad tracks, or I hit my dimmer switch for my signal lights because the signal lights on the bus are on the floor and they're like the dimmer switch on the floor on old cars.
Oh no, so you were confused.
So they were spring loaded on the floor, one left and right signals, and once I got shot in the forehead when the cap of the signal flew off. Oh. And so my bus was permanently signaling right till I could get a mechanic there to fix it. But it shot me in the forehead, and I thought someone had shot me, but it was just the cap. It's a steel cap, and it popped off and hit me in the forehead.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. The worst part was my bus signals right for the rest of the night till they could come and fix it.
So I'm curious, I do want to ask you, with the change days, there were some routes that you would absolutely not take anymore.
Right.
What were your least favorite routes?
Well, as I got older, I didn't like the long trip to Ogden or Provo. For obvious reasons, as a bus driver, restrooms are far and few between. And I was on State Street once, and I had diarrhea and I was really sick. Oh, no. And so I would stop at every McDonald's or D's restaurant along the way. And there was a little old lady on my bus, and she says, "Are you okay, young man?" And I said, "Yeah, my wife's having a baby and I'm just using the phone to check and see how she's doing."
Oh.
So a couple of weeks later, I saw her on the bus and she says, "Did your wife have the baby?" I said, "Yeah, everything's cool."
Oh, man.
So as a bus driver, when you get older, you don't like the long routes because it's hard for restroom stops.
Right, that would be an issue.
And most people don't think about bus drivers having to use the restroom.
That's why you would never drink a lot or...
Right, so that's why bus drivers have kidney problems and stuff, because they try to hold as long as they can, and because you want to get the people where they're going. You don't want them to have to wait for you to go use the restroom.
Right, and since you had more seniority, you could pick the better routes.
So I picked the smaller routes that had a good place at each stop to use the restroom. And
so we know Ogden and Provo was not your favorite, and even at times State Street wasn't. What are some of your favorite routes, or what was your favorite route?
In the beginning, I loved the ski service, running up and down Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, and that was a lot of fun, but it became dangerous because people driving their cars didn't care. I had one instance where a Saab passed me on a really slick road, and the Saab flipped off the road and rolled once. And the 3 young men in the Saab jumped out of the Saab, took their skis out of the trunk, and flagged me down so they could get to the ski resort.
What?
They didn't care about their car. They just wanted to get skiing.
Wait, bus driver!
And I wasn't going to stop because the road was so slick. If you don't keep moving, once you lose traction, once you stop, then you may never get going again. So
Right.
you have to keep constantly moving. Constant contact with the tires slowly moving.
Was it scarier going up or down the canyon for
It was
you?
always scary coming down
Yeah.
because, but the buses have a terrific system. It's called a Jake brake. You never have to touch the brakes coming down because the internal combustion of the engine slows the engine down.
Oh, I like that.
That's why when you hear trucks coming out of the canyons, they go, "Brrr." Well, that's the Jake brake.
I love your sound
and it's
effect.
really loud and annoying, but it makes it so you never have to touch your brake and you can use the combustion of the engine
We need that in our cars.
to slow you down. But people in cars were the danger. They didn't care. I had 4 guys in a pickup truck, which was a 4-wheel drive pickup truck, pass me coming down the Seven Sisters in Little Cottonwood Canyon.
What is that? Explain.
It's 7 small turns on a kind of a straightaway, and at the bottom is a hard left turn. So in my bus, as we got to that turn, the truck had plowed into the mountain. No one was hurt, but everybody on my bus opened their windows and clapped at the guys.
Oh no.
Because they were stopped and we were still moving. And so what became dangerous was the people in their cars.
Right, because they did their best to plow, and there is a lot of snow in those canyons.
And so that was the most that's one of the reasons why I quit going up. But my last stint up there was the 2002 Olympics. I drove for the Olympics and I had to make trips to Evanston, Wyoming and out to Wendover. People were staying in motels in Wendover and tour buses that came in from out of state. The drivers would get lost. So they kept me as a special bus and I would take tour groups of people wherever my supervisors told me to take them. I got to take Wayne Gretzky and his family up to the village.
Oh, that's neat.
I got to take several drunk Kazakhstani hockey players back to the village.
And you would show up at 10 o'clock at night during the Olympics. At
Right,
home.
I had to report to work at 10 in the morning and I was the last bus back to the garage. Sometimes that was 2 in the morning. I made several trips up to Evanston in the dead of winter when it was icy and slick. And
That's no fun. And that one day that there was an avalanche, that your bus.
I was driving the bus in Little Cottonwood Canyon and White Pine area slid out. The bus right behind me got hit. Knocked him off the road about 10 feet. So I pulled over and we got everybody off of his bus and got them onto mine. Took them up to the lodges. Then we were stuck up in the lodge for a day and a half.
Oh yeah, you said you loved their hot chocolate up there.
Hot chocolate, and they gave us anything we wanted to eat because they couldn't get anybody up there. So we had to start our buses every 4 hours and run them for 20 minutes.
Just so they didn't freeze. That's
Right,
crazy.
and they had a place up there where we would stay. So we switched off at night. One of us would go start our buses. There were 3 of us up there.
Oh wow.
And
Dad,
when they
you've had
finally
a
got the
lot.
other bus, he came up and joined us, and then we cleaned up, and we were back down the canyon.
That is awesome. I love your stories, Dad. You've been through a lot for sure. And yeah, we'll never forget Ralph and Ringo Starr and Kaboom and all of your experiences that we've had together. And this feels like a good place to end for us. And we will see you next time or hear from you. Well, you'll hear from us next time. See ya.